that has happened this week. This kind of gets into the news a little bit. I spent some time playing 2 video games called Duke Nukem Forever.
That's
2
a shame.
video games.
Wait,
2.
all right, explain.
There are
that.
2 of them.
What does that mean?
So Duke Nukem Forever, a game that was released in 2011, back on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC. I fired up the PC version and played through the first hour or so of that game again to feel alive. It didn't work.
Oh, okay.
I've never felt more dead.
Oh, okay.
That game is fucking terrible.
I've heard rumors.
Yeah. And the reason I played it is because a build and I guess the full source code of Duke Nukem Forever circa 2001 leaked out onto the internet last night.
2001.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I guess we'll get into it in the news, but like, how does that just leak out? Does someone just...
Gravity.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's
Well, when you get older, things start leaking. And
Is it a malicious leak? An accidental?
It's not accidental because it came, well, I mean, the people that eventually did put it out like it was a freaking Wares release with an info file and stuff. Like it's broken up into 50 meg fucking
vintage
RARs. Like it's they packaged it for release.
Ooh, this is a vintage release. I like that.
And that's fun. They also had to spend some time patching it and trying to come up with some ways that would make more of it load. George, but wait, I mean, we'll just get into it now instead of waiting for the news. Some screenshots and video of this build were put out a couple of days ago. And along with that, they were like, we'll probably release it to the public in June. And then last night they were like, yeah, you didn't believe that June shit, did you? Here you go. And dumped it online.
What a weird hype cycle, I guess.
I don't know. Yeah. And it's interesting because this is the version of the game that was shown, or this is around the time that the game was shown at E3. The E3 2001 version, like the demo they showed of Duke Nukem Forever. A lot of screenshots came from that era. Like that is the era or so, the era that people think of when they think of like what that game was before it became what it became.
Mm-hmm.
Which is to say it took another 10 years for that game to come out. It took Gearbox buying the IP. And all kinds of other weird dumb shit for a game called Duke Nukem Forever to finally come out. But there was another game built on Unreal Engine 1 that 3D Realms was working on for years and years and years, famously. And so some chunk of that, which sounds like it is relatively, I mean, like George Broussard, who, who's the founder like of 3D Realms, right? Was out there saying like, this looks legit to me. I don't want to talk about it. Basically saying like, this was a painful thing. I don't want to really revisit it. And if you dig through kind of what some of the reporting was from the era, but also in the years following, I think the people who have kind of spoken about it have said like, yeah, George just wouldn't stop putting stuff in the game. Mm-hmm. And so it just kept getting more and more bloated and more bloated and more bloated. And it took forever to get that to run reasonably well. It's Unreal Engine 1. They're stretching it to its limits so you could fucking play pool or whatever dumb shit they want to put in their DDR. And because the franchise had made so much money, they for a long time they just kind of didn't have to ship. Mm-hmm. And so they just kept tinkering away at this dumb thing for a very long time, kind of going nowhere with it until the money ran out and all this other stuff. And it eventually Gearbox picks it up and turns it into something else. And so it's interesting to go back and look at this game because it's a 2001 era. So remember 2001, that's the year that Xbox came out.
Oh, okay.
That's like the year Halo came out. That's like
like the year after never mind. Half-Life came out in like 98 or something.
Yeah, that was 98. And so, but it is this game that still has its foot in that era of PC shooting. Like, not to say it was ever going to be the quality of Half-Life or anything like that, but it is. It's a. You look at the player movement and stuff like that. Like, it's a much snappier game. It's a game where you can have every gun in the game all at once. Whereas by the time 2011 rolled around, trends had changed so much that they turned it into a Halo situation where you could only hold 2 weapons at the same time. And eventually they changed that, I think, so you could hold 4, but it was never like an old PC shooter where it's just like every number key is going to do at least one thing. And in this case, like you look at the weapons menus from the screenshots that leaked out, and it's just full of shit. And in the way that shooters were at that time. And it's kind of fascinating to go back and look at this weird early 2000s era. Like every menu in the game just looks like a shitty Perfect Dark kind of, just like that era, that early 2000, right. Like everything's italicized because it's the future, like that type of aesthetic on the menus and stuff. And then see them trying to cram a Duke Nukem sequel, or what they thought people who played Duke Nukem 3D would want out of another Duke Nukem game, which is such an insane concept. And so there's not a ton of video game to this leak. It is a bunch of levels. Like it sounds like all the content that they showed at that E3 is somewhere in that build. There are some enemies here and there. There's some NPCs that'll walk you around in some situations, and there's just a bunch of goofy shit. So it's not a final game. It's not something you're going to play start to finish if you ever do decide to get your hands on it, which I'm not going to get into the morality or whatever around you doing so. But it is just this fascinating relic of like something you kind of never thought you would see.
Yeah.
That just kind of dropped out of nowhere. And I don't know if this is something that was kicking around in the hands of a small number of people for a while and one of them decided to leak it, or if it's just, did someone involved at 3D Realms just like pass it off recently, or, like I don't know what the chain of events that led to this release actually are, but it's just super fucking fascinating.
That's interesting. Yeah.
To dig through it and kind of realize that like, the direction they were heading in, and you see some of this in the game that shipped in 2011, but by the time it got to Gearbox and 2K, I think like there was a certain aspect of just like, well, we can't release this. We can't, like the tone of this is like there are parts of the 2001 game that you look at and go like, this is like if Postal had a budget. This is like if the people that made Postal 2 and they were just like, fuck it, man, we're edgy, like wanted to make a video game, but had infinite money. Well, not infinite, but money up to a point. And just kept working on it because there's just aspects of it. You're just like, this sucks. This is like, oh, right. These are the people that made Duke Nukem 3D and also fucking Shadow Warrior. Like, of course it's like this. And they had huge success. So of course it's like that. There's like text to speech dialogue in there that they hadn't, gone and recorded real dialogue for. There's like a few lines from Duke. There's some captions and stuff like that, but it just, so you can't really get the full, you're not going to get a full game story out of it and piecing together every little bit of dialogue. But then, maybe if you dig through the source code, maybe there's a lot more there that you just don't see. I don't know for sure.
It's really interesting though. Should we check this out for UPF or something?
No, probably not. No, there's it sounds like that there's there's like full frontal nudity in some of the menus. Like there's just a bunch of placeholder fucking weird shit in there that is probably maybe not the thing to stream. Also, I tried streaming it to a Discord last night, and it really doesn't like being run in a window, and fucking just dies every single time.
So it doesn't like being run.
It does not like being run.
All valid reasons not to do the thing I suggested.
This app does not like being run.
Yeah. Yes. For sure. But it's so fascinating to look at it, and as more and more people dig through this source code, there's been people out there on Twitter saying like, well, I'm going to finish the game and make sure that it, I'm going to put it together and put these pieces together into something and try to craft a real video game here.
Good luck
like,
to
good
them.
Luck. Yeah. You don't have to. You don't need to do
fool.
this. But yeah, it's fascinating to see it. And I think the most fascinating part about it to me is going back and playing the 2011 game and seeing just how much conceptually is still there. Like there's a casino that you in the opening of that game called the Lady Killer Casino, and it's got this logo on the buttons, and like all that stuff is in that 2001 build. And it's weird to think about like the decade in the middle there, and the idea that game changed hands and became a completely different video game, completely different engine, all this other. Well, maybe it's just a later Unreal Engine. I don't know what the final game actually runs on, but just this idea of like some concepts having a through line from those days into this final product is really fucking mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
Because you always figured, it's like by the time that thing resurfaced, they showed it off at PAX, and I remember playing it and just being like, what the like, all right, like, this will end up being okay. It didn't seem great, but who knows? But it just seemed like such a different game. And when you look at the footage of the old one, you're like, this is something different. These are not the same products. But to see just elements of like whether it's the story or different characters or other stuff like that, like seeing those bits and pieces that somehow made it through that decade into the final product is really fascinating.
It's also wild to see how games were, and like it's just like that's the perfect time capsule of this is what first-person shooters kind of were, or an attempt of them.
Right. It's like that's like someone had to sit down and go like, okay, like we're in a new era of shooters, or they were about to be, right? Like Halo changed expectations for like the mainstream audience, and there became this like there was a rising console audience for shooters at that point. Once Halo came out, GoldenEye kind of did it to an extent too, but it wasn't really like the PC shooter market really wasn't what it used to be either. So I imagine being in that weird limbo, that weird mid period of like, it's pre-Halo, but Halo's right around the corner. People are very excited for it. Like, what is like you're in the middle of this trend shift, and like that build of Duke Nukem Forever seems very much on the other side of that chasm.
What a
of
dark
like
future it could have been.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's fucking weird just to look at and think about like, well, what if that game actually just came out early 02? It probably would have been eaten alive because it would only come out on PC at first.
Right.
It would have, it would have been a year after Halo. It would have been like just the way that Unreal Tournament kind of just didn't. I don't know, because UT 2004. So like, there were still great PC shooters, competitive shooters happening by 03, 04. So maybe it would have had a shot. We're out somewhere in the middle of that like Half-Life 2 era. So yeah, it's
does the name Duke Nukem carry that much favor amongst people, other than just kind of being now memed to death?
Do you mean right now, or do you mean then?
Maybe then
for
more
sure.
so, yeah, right.
Then for sure. Like Duke 3D was a huge game, and and an awesome video game. I think people get caught up in like the Duke character.
Sure.
And that's the only thing people remember now is just like, oh, like what a fucking lame.
That game's good. Yes.
Yeah.
That game rules. Yeah.
Like what it did above and beyond what Doom was doing. Like just, I had a friend who worked at a computer store, and they had 4 PCs networked together in the back, and we would just go back there and play fucking 4-player Duke games all the time because the weapons were crazy. It had like a trip mine. Like it just had weapons that like Doom didn't have. It was just like more thoughtful, weird stuff. And being able to play with those strange toys in a competitive game was really awesome. Like the gameplay itself, it's Doom, but you can look up and down, and that stuff's not awesome. You get a jetpack and you can kind of hover up and down, but it's janky as fuck.
Changed gaming forever. Now looking up is like,
I know. Now
so
everyone's looking up.
Everyone's looking up these days.
Yeah. But yeah, like there were gameplay things that Duke Nukem 3D did that made it worth the attention. It wasn't just this meme factory or whatever. But now, like thinking about it now, like it's been 11 years since that last Duke Nukem game.
Oh, wow.
That was 2011 that game came out. I remember we went to E3. We went to E3 2011, and then word got out that like, hey, 2K totally has retail copies of Duke Nukem Forever at their booth, and they're not giving them out to everyone. And we had already had our 2K appointment and didn't get one. And so we went back and found the guy. And we're like, hey, look, listen, you need to give us this video game. And they very much didn't want to. but they did. And so then I spent the rest of that show and it was very much like this happened. This doesn't happen as much in video games anymore because everything's so digital and whatever. But there was very much an aspect of like, I only have so many of these and I don't want to be hounded by every single person at this show for a copy. So I'm going to hand you this. Do not fucking show it to anyone. And a lot of review copies came with those sorts of things back then, simply because like so-and-so didn't want to get a billion phone calls from every single video game website in the world or whatever, however big or small. Anyway, we shook that guy down, got a copy of the game.
Held him upside down.
Yeah.
And all the Duke Nukem copies fell out of his car.
Right. And then I had to walk around the rest of that show with this cursed object in my bag.
Contraband.
Yeah, and I got home and played it and it sucked. That's the end of that story. But like just a terrible, and going back and playing it now is just like a good reminder of just like, God, it doesn't do anything. It's so slow. Like the opening to that game is a lot of like walk and talk. Like they learned all the wrong lessons from like, you know, what a Gears of War had done and even what Halo had done by that point. It is, Arbitrary Water in chat says Duke Nukem Forever is a wretched, miserable game. That's exactly right. Oh. It's fucking abysmal. It is like, and at the time, I don't think anyone involved with it was saying like, it's out, it's going to be great. It was more like, this game we're putting it out. And that's exciting, right? It
exists. Get off our back.
It's exciting that this game will exist. Like everyone had already written it off. Like no one was expecting Duke Nukem Forever to come out at that point. It was already like fucking whatever. Mm-hmm. And then when the rights got acquired and everything else and Gearbox stepped in, Randy Pitchford said, I'm going to wave my magic wand over this video game and it's going to ship. And
he fucking abracadabraed that shit into existence. Let me tell you.
but like to what end? And now we're going to get a Duke Nukem movie.
Don't you remember too, without airing too much dirty laundry, like there were scandals with like the release and review and just like all these things that like
I'm trying to remember like around the Duke release. Like
there was a very specific thing.
You have to tell me. You have to talk about it now because I don't.
I just remember someone. I don't remember the circumstances or the people specifically, but I remember someone getting very upset about how much that game was getting dragged.
This? I guess I'm trying to think. Was this pre-Twitter? But I guess not.
No, it was in the middle of Twitter.
Did Randy Pitchford get angry that Duke Nukem Forever was getting dragged?
I think it was a PR person.
Okay. Well. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, he was removed from the account in the wake of that.
Oh.
Yeah, I just remember like, and then everyone just sort of being like, "Oh, come on, this game's not good. What do you don't?"
Yeah, it was very much like a quiet part out loud sort of thing of just like, well, I'm not going to send games out to these outlets anymore because they're so unprofessional. And like, all right,
unanimous hatred for this thing that you got early.
Like, all right, everyone. All right, yeah. That guy's a good guy. He still is working. He got caught in a bad moment there, but that dude's okay.
So you mentioned the Duke Nukem movie. Is there any like news since 2020 about that, or that's all?
Nothing
like,
official.
Trying to look it up. It's like, is this really happening? Or
I'm going to say yes. That's really going to happen.
I mean, they finally made the Uncharted movie. There's
also remember,
TV
like
series.
this is a post-Embracer Gearbox that is now finishing up the Borderlands movie.
I mean,
and they specifically went to go start a film division with Gearbox Entertainment or whatever it is. Like Randy, as he said at PAX, is a little bit Hollywood now. And so they're gonna fucking do it. They're going to make a fucking Duke Nukem movie in 2024. You know, who knows by the time.
Look, I know this sort of like directly conflicts with everything we've been preaching the last 6 months, but I would just like to say I fully nominate Chris Pratt for the role of Duke motherfucking Nukem. From my mouth to God's ears, please, God, Lord, who I believe in.
I don't want John Cena to do it because I like John Cena.
Well, no, I got bad news for you.
I'm just what?
That's
okay. Gee, that felt real, but no, like seriously, Lord of Hollywood, please make it your business to sign and lock up Chris Pratt for the role.
Lock him in the gym.
Yeah, I don't know. I suspect on the other end of Peacemaker, John Cena is probably the perfect choice for Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
Do you think a Duke Nukem movie would be like a parody or
I
a
have
satire?
no idea.
Or like
what is it? What
like
is that? What is that? Right? Like
what's
what
the
is
angle?
yeah? Is it
Is
Duke
it- is it
Nukem
gonna
is the
be-
only serious character, or
No,
like the
no,
only one who takes
is it gonna
himself
be a
seriously?
comedy?
Some
Is it
last
gonna be a
action
s-
hero shit.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it going to be
100%.
sad bastard Duke Nukem, who is
No,
like
no, no, no.
ashamed of
No.
his misogynist past
It's
or whatever?
gonna
I
be
don't
fish
fucking
out of
know.
water shit. Where like
It's
Oh,
think
no.
of it
Austin
as-
Powers, but he like hates and wants to subjugate women.
Oh
I'm
my
just saying, like,
god!
Oh wait, like Austin Powers, weird, huh?
last
Ah.
action hero, right? Okay, he is this action hero in real
Okay.
life where he's just
Yep.
like, what the fuck? Nothing blows up, everything hurts. What is this pain? Huh? People die for real?
I watch that movie.
It's amazing. And then Duke Nukem comes into Earth. We'll just make him an alien. I don't know what we'll make him, but
Getting slapped by women hurts.
to fuck these bitches.
exactly. Like, what do you mean I can't fuck every like this car?
there's-
Right? It's gonna
There's
be like
laws out here about that.
baby.
Someone's gonna spill a
that
soda on
is
a
alarmingly
computer.
good.
Sparks are gonna show up, and then Duke is going to be materialized in the real world. What's gonna happen? Gonna be a
And
security
he has,
dude.
and it's like a Pygmalion thing where his like female roommate that accidentally summoned him has to like turn him into a proper modern gentleman or something.
We can't
I'm
give
gonna
these ideas out for free.
women, baby.
Yeah.
Dude,
I'm woke
I
as
remember
fuck.
He's
like
gonna get
years
canceled
ago.
mid-movie.
I remember years ago.
That'll be the
there was,
low
like,
part.
some-
That'll be him, like milk was a poor choice.
Exactly.
Years ago, there was some interview with like a bunch of different like indie developers being like, well, we asked some indie developers, how would you reimagine Duke Nukem? And Sam Barlow, the guy that wrote Silent Hill Shattered Memories, Her Story, War Games. Remember there was a War Games game
Yeah.
very briefly?
There's a new one
Not
that I
anymore.
don't think it's out yet, but there's something. He's on something now, right?
But
Anyway.
he's I got beef with this guy and how he writes and what he writes, but whatever. He suggested that
I don't
like
know, he made the one good Silent Hill game. What's your beef?
Oh my god.
Go
You
on.
want to see
Go
just his
on.
head explode? Let's go.
motherfucker. Anyway, so he was saying that the Duke Nukem remake would be like, I want to get to know his sensitive side. I think like he goes to a strip club, he stays really late, and he talks to one of the strippers and really gets to know her, and
It's the wrestler.
he turns into a listener instead of a doer. And I was just reading this being like, man, shut the fuck up, dude.
Actually,
Who-
Darren Aronofsky should write the Duke Nukem movie now that I've had a moment to think about it.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's go that way. Okay, and if you want Mickey Rourke to come back as Duke Nukem, which plays, I'm sorry, that plays.
That plays.
I feel like
Uh,
do you end up, I can almost see a scene at the end of that movie that's like the redemptive Duke Nukem has found his place, but it's like end of Boogie Nights style.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
He
stand
whips
up
out
and
his
whip out my
dick.
cock.
He whips out his dick and it's actually really small instead
It's
of
my
very
big
long.
dick and I'm ready to fuck.
I'm just
Finally.
imagining he's pushing a stroller at the end, and his baby also has sunglasses and cocks a shotgun.
right.
Sure.
The cycle of life continues.
Also, it's half
Gotta
pig cop. He's
Yeah.
he's found a. Anyway,
I mean, look, now that we've written the thing,
Cut
Uh-huh.
the check,
Yeah.
whoever.
that's right, Randy.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you can keep it. You can keep it.
never mind.
Yeah, it's a fascinating turn of events that's gotten people talking about Duke Nukem in a way that no one has in a very long time, and that can probably only be good for the franchise in some sick way.
Yeah.
So
Now I want to check out Duke Nukem 3D.
right, like no one knows where the it is not public where this leak came from. I don't know where it came from, but like
Part of the marketing.
yeah, in some sick way, it's like somehow the best thing that could happen for a company that is probably going to try to make a Duke Nukem movie here in the relatively near term.
Oh, it looks like there's a
Those,
script in these files. Huh.
Oh, what's
Those
that?
alien
The NFL file was
are
the
gonna
file
pay
like
for-
USB stick.
Alien
medieval
bastards are gonna
times.
pay for kidnapping my gay daughter who I love. That's the
Okay,
sequel.
I could get behind that.
Yeah,
That's-
sure. Why
yeah,
not?
like
Yeah.
like I said, it makes sense.
That's redeemable.
Duke Nukem is like in his mid to late 60s now, retired cop who's just on a different political spectrum
Mel
as his
Gibson.
as his daughter like Jess said, who's also a cop.
So
I don't know
now
what
it's like
story
you're
we're trying
just
to
this
tell
is
here.
like the Die Hard video
Yeah.
game sequel where they said
Right.
like you play as John McClane's grown daughter who's also a cop, and you're like, all right.
And he gets dragged back in for one last romp.
How does the
Yeah,
same
he
shit
gets
keep
canceled.
happening
He
to the
gets
same
canceled his first
guy
day.
5
Back on the-
times?
Back on the job. It could happen.
Yeah,
They stole my apes.
it's just a big NFT guy.
Oh, I see the best idea in the chat, and his daughter's voiced by Ronda Rousey.
And scene.
I'm just asking questions about Sandy Hook.
Oh no, Jesus.
Cool
All
that
right.
came out. Cool that
Yeah,
leaked.
it's cool that came out. It's around.